So, hello and welcome to another Clean Conversation with Caitlin. And today I'm talking with my friend and colleague, Julian Burton from Delta 7. Julian, give us an overview of what do you do?
Well, in one sentence, we listen to people, turn words into pictures so people can talk about them, make visual metaphors, visual stories. My son says pictures of problems so people can talk about them.
So we've got a long-standing relationship where I know I've lent into your skills to visualize complex systems that I've been modeling either for individuals or for organizations. And I was just having a conversation this morning with Marion Way, and I wanted to get your take on it. So if I could give you a little overview, and then I'm imagining, and I may be wrong, this may be a very brief conversation, I'm imagining that you as an artist will have things to say about this as well. So I've got a group of trainee clean language interviewers. So clean language interviewing is interviewing using clean or contextually clean questions so that every bit of data that you get from the interviewee, you can demonstrate with your raw data, you can demonstrate that you minimally biased, deleted, generalized the information that you get. So you can get your interviews, that's great. And what we haven't been teaching yet, and what we're just designing, is the more advanced course, which is how do you have a clean analysis of the interviews. So we've been interviewing some young adults with chronic fatigue syndrome about, you know, the whole experience of having CFS for them is like what? And then I've been interviewing them. So not coaching, not with an idea of changing their experience, but of uncovering the structure of their experience as it is. So then I've transcribed this, and with the research group, what we're doing there is we're then analyzing the information in order to build a model. And so this is an interesting shift. So it's not the questioning, which, you know, we've got the clean language interviewing training, that's very robust now. And we know whether an interview is clean or not. That's got a very robust assessment process. And there's a course coming up in end of April on that, on cleanlearning.co.uk. But this is the analysis. So once you've got those interviews, then what do you do with them? And one of the things that I notice is I put them, I tabulate it, I give it to the students, and I say, as you read each sentence, what's it about? What's the sentence about? What does it mean? How can you cleanly build up an understanding of the model underpinning what the client is saying, what the interviewee is saying? And what they do first time round, almost indefinite, almost without exception, is they say things like, oh, they're really depressed, or they're really frightened, or they're feeling abandoned. And that for me is, if that's the data, that meaning is non-adjacent to the data. And so then I'll say something like, okay, so that's because they all do it, you can say, well, that's what this person thinks, or that's what this person thinks, or that's what this person thinks. But they're too far away from the data. Or they go, this sentence is about not knowing, and this sentence is, or they use the actual in vivo words. So this is not knowing, this is trembling, this is tiring, this is, but then that's too close to the data. So then their codes are really just the interview again. And so there's something in between here, which I think of as clean analysis. And I think we've talked about it before as visual parsing. It's like this word, and this word are all kind of the same words. But if you're going to make a model of it, they're all this kind of thing. And
can I just say, I think you're showing us with your hands what the problem is. You're saying there's this word, and this word, which is linear. And you're going, but it's like that. See, and when you say model, implies, for me, it implies some non-linearity and visual spatial structuring, which you can't describe in linear language.
Yes. And you know, because when they say something again later, because you've started making a visual spatial structure of it, you know that this is another example of that. It's not a new word. It doesn't need its new bit in the model. It's another way of saying that thing that we've already got here. But I really struggle. It feels like I set people up to fail, like they have to go too far or they have to go too close. And it seems like I don't have a way of describing how they go in the middle. But Marion Way, who's amongst everything else that she does, is doing a degree in fine art, was saying that they had a very similar thing with the painting. So the tutor gave them a painting and got them to analyze it. And they say, oh, it's feathers, or this, the sky's really light, or and they're like, okay, that's not it. That's the meaning that you've attributed to it. But what we want to know is, how did the painter make you have that meaning? And so you could go, well, there were 72 rectangles and 130 triangles, and the rectangles and the measurement. You could do that data. But I think that's similar. That's too close.
Too linear.
But there's something in between, which is like when they did the sky, they've used a mixture of rectangles and triangles, and it's random, which means that as your eyes follow it, it creates the sense of rippling. I mean, sorry, on the water. And that creates the sense of rippling. And you're like, oh, okay, that's a simpler thing. It's not this, it's not that. It's what's the least meaning that you definitely get from these words, or from in the paintings, from this technique. So that's the little, it's not all the data, and it's not your implied meaning, which is too non-adjacent. It's what's the least you can, what's the closest to the data where you have meaning, where you can say something meaningful.
I think there's something here that it's still staying within the bounds of linear verbal cognitive structure. You're trying to describe something that can't be described in words. I mean, you can give a flavor of it. I'm thinking of Nora Bateson's idea of warm data. It's data with a relational context. So even if you did a mind map of your writing about a piece of art, because when you speak about a piece of art, that is purely linear. It's just the one word after another. You do a mind map, there's some clouds, there's this ripple. Even those words on a page, structured visually, would create, I suggest, more meaning because there's visual structure to it, even though it's words and lines and boxes.
But I don't want to create so much meaning that the meaning isn't fully data related. I want the meaning. I want you to be able to evidence that the model, it's a little bit like grounded theory for those researchers. I want to be able to evidence really clearly that the model is grounded in data.
Well, what model? Are they making a model of a painting?
No, I'm sorry. The painting's a different analogy. They're making a model of an interview about what it means to have chronic fatigue syndrome.
But that interview is from a person in whose body the knowledge or data is not held linearly. It's only described linearly.
Yeah.
So they're a complex system. So it needs a non-linear relational mapping system to create the meaning you're talking about. I think. I don't know if I'm going in the right direction.
Yes. The model will end up being non-linear because it's non-linear. That's one of the places that we've got to at the moment, is that even within a system that's made up of tissue, bone and cells firing, what you've got is some symptoms are assigned to different ages. So some symptoms started early, and you can see as a foundational symptom, and others arrived later, and they are caused by the body's reaction to that symptom, or the mind's judgment about that symptom. So so the client experiences it non-linearly, but they have to explain it linearly. And a good, clean interview should, and I think this is what it's just that's why this is a conversation and not a presentation. It's that the clean interview, as you go through the clean interview, you're building the model in the moment, because you need to get the data required to make it into a model as you go along. And that's the difference between a really basic clean interview, which is just as an interview with clean questions, to a more advanced clean interview. And as I'm saying, what I'm trying to teach this group of students is, how do you build up a meaningful structure without imposing too much of your own experience of what that would mean if you had it? Do you know, it's like you sometimes talk within Delta 7, you know, up is actually better, down is
prepositions.
Yeah, things that are more important are in the foreground, things that, but you might have something that's very important, but in the background, and actually that might be very, so it's a little bit like that. It's a little bit like,
I'm just thinking, can I share one of the visual parceling diagrams that we made a couple of years ago? Because I think trying to show what you're trying to say might help.
Okay.
So, do you remember this?
Yep.
So do you want to explain what this is to the viewers?
Yes. So this is so parceling out the meaning. So the linear words are, effective co-lecturing is a high aim for some colleagues, and it's the luck of the draw if my partner is willing to join me at this lofty level. And so as I hear those words with a clean modeling head, it gets as far as effective co-lecturing is a high aim. And so there's a thing called a high aim. And for some colleagues, there's some things called colleagues, and there's some. So not all colleagues. So I hear the structure implied in that sentence, the deep structure implied by the surface structure, if I used a generative linguistic way of thinking about it. And it's the luck of the draw. So when I hear luck of the draw, then I go, I am not in control of it. It is not my responsibility. So the luck of the draw is an abdication of responsibility. That's what I make that thing mean. So it's the luck of the draw. If my partner, so that's an individual person, is willing, so that means that they could join them, but they're not, it's a choice, to join me at this lofty level, which means I believe I'm okay, they're a bit crap. They probably won't join me because they don't have that high aim. Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to take this away now so that we can go back to, so if that's an example of visual parceling, does this relate to what the people you're training in visual
yes, so
analysis help, as in terms of visually structuring adjacent non-linear concepts?
Yes, it's getting it's I don't know that it has to be visual, because I know that I don't particularly see it. They're spatial for me, but I don't see things at the different spaces. It's that the meaning has a spatial representation.
But your hands are representing things visually.
Yes, my hands are yeah, well, you can look at them. I'm just thinking, I don't want people who are listening to this to think you have to be able to make beautiful pictures, because I don't have any pictures. It's just the words for me. But some people make really nice pictures in their minds. But yeah, so this little funny bit between all the data and too much meaning is there's loads of structure in the words already. Words are actually very useful ways of supporting you to find out what's going on for me. That's what we invented them for, is to transmit what's going on in my system so that your system understands it, we can collaborate in some way. And there's loads of structure in here. What I think is tricky is we're too busy over here making meaning, misunderstanding people, misrepresenting what they've said, leaning into our own experience. And what I'm trying to train people to do is to be closer, more data orientated, and still to make meaning. So not to trip over here where it's all, they get overwhelmed, and not over here where they comfortably start thinking about their own experiences of partnerships, their own feelings. But just here, what's the structure we can make out of just what we've got so far? But I'm not, I think, as I said, at the moment, all I know how to do is to let them fail that way, let them fail this way, and then find this over time.
I mean, even something as simple, I mean, we don't have to get into necessarily analyzing fine art, but getting a big sheet of paper like I've got here and doing a mind map, just that will loosen up the linearity of the symbol system and our thinking, because we think linearly in words, we think visually in visuals, you know, just to make it a bit non-linear.
And I wonder, so we can make that, and that is actually where we are in the class at the moment, is they are all now making their models as they go along and then taking photographs of them and uploading them, so that we have, and some are more mind mappy and some are more visual. But what I was just thinking, as you said then, is of course what we're not doing is trying it on in our own bodies. It's going, you know, if it's a weight that holds me down, if I try and put that into my body, I can't, because I don't know where it is, and I don't know what its size or shape is. And so that because this modeling is what leads you to your next clean question. It leads you to go, what's the bit I don't have yet that has to, as David Grove would say, what has to be there that is not there yet for what is there to make sense.
And by definition, I imagine there's some sense of clean interviewing, some metaphors in there. Even prepositions can be drawn on, over, under, next to. So they could just try to draw a mind map. Where are the metaphors? What is the metaphor? I feel stuck. We don't have to draw a stuck person, but at least they know that's going to resonate in their bodies.
Yes. Okay.
So that's the bridge of meaning.
Preposition. So yeah, there is a thing of, because what I'm looking for is, I want to do it as a for the Northern Taste of Clean in July. I want to have this as a presentation, and so what I'm looking for is, I don't want it to be like this conversation now. I want to have done more structural thinking, so that I can go, oh, and here's a nice template to follow. Here are some ways of analyzing data.
Well, I would play this video and draw on paper the shapes your hands are making, at least. Yeah, we can easily do that. That would be fun. I mean, building that embodied sense of somebody speaking, somebody drawing, and there's shapes associated with the words.
Yeah.
Even the prepositions. I mean, they're so small, you don't realize they're metaphors, part of metaphorical structure.
Yeah, and as clean interviewers, that is where I need you to be. I need you to be hearing them structurally as they are said, and building the model during the interview. That's the purpose.
Okay. So even in that visual parcel, you don't necessarily have to draw somebody being stuck. You just draw a name, and then under, on top of something before, you could actually just use prepositions to visually structure a diagram.
Yes.
Rather than writing it out in Word.
So this is my call to action as a result of this conversation. So this is great. And if we have a couple more of these before Northern Taste, then I think I'll be ready for that, to present that to other people interested in doing this kind of work. If others have come across tools that help with this, so I know you and I are very good at doing this. Both of us have whiteboards and pens, and if anyone else listening to this has come across tools, I know that some people use Canva, some people use Mural, that they could also use to help as we're analysing an interview or listening to an interview, doing it as we go along. I'd really appreciate some recommendations and links to them. But for now, let's leave it. I think, let's...
Fascinating. I can't wait to talk about it more.
Yeah, we'll listen to this again. And I do think you're right. If I could then, with you, if I could visualize that process for analyzing interviews as they go, first of all, retrospectively, because that's the easier thing to do because you've got time, but then how to do it in the moment. So coding in the moment is the skill that I want to teach. Brilliant.
Fantastic. Great. I'll speak to you soon.